Game of Thrones got me thinking recently, and I realized it's a bit like a fleet of fishermen. Or a barrel cactus, whichever metaphor works better for you. If you're a writer, you know what a hook is. It's that special something in your story that metaphorically hooks the attention of your target reader or audience, instilling in them a desire to know more about your story. It's a promise to the reader or the viewer that there will be something for them in this story. It leaves them with a question. In today's age of instant gratification and information retrieval that moves at the speed of AI via fiber optic bandwidth, you better have a good hook, finely tuned to your exact target audience so that you can make it as effective as possible. And it better be placed in the earliest moments of your story. The first line, the first seconds. Writers sweat blood, agonizing over their story's hook, researching the specific interests of their target audience and tried and tested tropes. And they rack their brain, manipulating their world and characters so that the most interesting thing possible can happen right out of the gates. Refining and refining, draft after draft, knowing that if they don't get everything exactly right, they might never hook anyone. What a waste of agony for such a terrible gamble. All that for a perceived single moment of opportunity. But I think that's all it is, perception. And I think that it's this perception that's making the process painful in the first place. It's like viewing the population of the world as fish in the sea, and your plan is to send a lone fisherman off into the blue after one very particular type of fish. No wonder you stress out. You have to figure out where in the vast ocean your fish lurks, how big of a fish hook it needs to be securely snagged, and what type of fish hook it requires, not to mention the specific bait your target fish prefers. And you have to keep in mind that these fish you're hunting are smart. After your fisherman has reeled it in, there's a high probability that fish will flip and flop right out of the boat and back into the ocean, never to be tempted by your fisherman's bait ever again. Why not cut the stress, and instead of sending out just one fisherman hunting just one sort of fish, send out a fleet, each boat with a different kind of bait and varying sizes of hooks, and put them on rotation. Keep sending new fishermen out. Let them hunt whatever they prefer, casting for whatever fish is opportunistic in the moment. And cover the ocean, so that once a fish is reeled in, if it does manage to escape one boat while the fisherman has his back turned, it'll have a good chance of flopping not back into the sea, but into another fisherman's boat. In writer's terms, what I'm saying is, don't work on creating one great hook. Instead, work on several, mostly good hooks. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wouldn't handling multiple hooks just multiply the stress? First of all, I'm not sure creativity works exactly that way. More likely, overstressing will only happen if you choose to treat each hook as though it is your only chance to secure your audience or reader. But just try to reframe this in your mind and consider the possibilities. You don't have to worry as much about one hook if you have several capable of doing the job, especially if they're all a little different. This occurred to me when I was considering rewatching Game of Thrones, just the first 6 seasons. This show blasted the barriers of niche interests, and it created one of the broadest audiences in all of television history. And it was a devoted audience. Sports bars that premiered the episodes of the final season were packed like it was a UFC championship. But how did this happen? Well, I think that the story in the show sent out a fleet instead of just one lone fisherman, with little hooks just about everywhere, and each of them potentially a hook for a different audience. Let's break it down. One of the first steps in creating an effective hook is to make sure that your target audience sees that they are going to get something interesting to them. It's a promise from the storyteller. In a way, that promise on its own is a small hook. It leaves your audience with a question. So I asked myself what sort of things were promised and what sort of questions might have arisen from A Game of Thrones, the first episode. First, we get a promise of fantasy world building when we see the wall. This appeals to the epic fantasy lover, where unique worlds are the expectation. They want to know more about this wall. How was it created? Why was it created? Then we get a murder mystery with hints of horror and ritual when our main character, at least for now, finds the mutilated bodies of the wildlings arranged in a peculiar shape. This probably targeted a narrower niche of fantasy lovers, of the grimdark or horror variety. And a murder mystery has its own audience too, and that one happens to cross genre boundaries. This scene might have hooked folks who normally don't have a thing for fantasy, but do enjoy a good murder mystery, with elements of horrific and bizarre, possibly religious ritual. We then get a surprisingly effective character-establishing scene between the three men that we've been following. The main character tells the others that he saw something surreal in the woods. The old man is disturbed and wants to go back to the wall, but the patrol leader bullies the other two for overreacting, being ignorant and superstitious cowards, and he orders that we're all gonna go and investigate the so-called crime scene. The dialogue is concise and potent, and the actors did a great job with their relatively minor roles. Sympathy for a character is also capable of stretching beyond the boundaries of genre. We were with the main character when he came across the wildling bodies. We know that crime scene was real. We like the old guy for wisely siding with the obvious truth, and we despise the patrol leader for being an arrogant ass, and we can't wait to see him eat his words and maybe get slapped around for being just a jerk to our main boy. Who doesn't sympathize with someone who is telling a truth that we know to be true while others laugh at him and say, "Prove it"? Now we're hooked. Along for the ride where we hope to see this jabroni put in his place for his wrongness. This locks us in all the more when our characters go to investigate and the bodies are gone. What? No, they were just there. We just saw them like 3 minutes ago. Now we're really invested. I'm going to save the deeper dive into creating sympathy for characters involved in an opening action scene at a later time, but for this video essay on hooks, I'm just going to leave it at this. When the White Walker tossed the head of the old man to our main boy, the show established a very big hook. We will create characters you will be rooting for, and we will be putting them in very real peril. Next, can a title sequence count as a hook? Absolutely. Sweeping, epic music, including what sounds like war drums, and an excellent setup of the darkness in this show by braiding the music into an unsettling minor key, and then actual world building unfolding like a tabletop origami miniature. And I don't know what that final instrument is, but it reminds me of something a noble lady in a medieval court would be playing during a feast, except she'd be doing it to distract other lords and ladies from cloak and dagger shenanigans happening in hidden alcoves. Anyone who appreciates music and understands the implications of themes hidden in it will pick up on some of these things. I'm going to lightly touch on some of the hooks that happen beyond this point. Oh no! Our main boy is captured! More brilliantly established, sympathetic characters and their relationships are highlighted. Supportive, good heart, frustrated and determined, bored and adventurous, observant and just. The harsh life of royalty during this time, and how it affects the way children who are expected to lead are raised. We also get a very subtle introduction to the drama of medieval family life when a bastard child is raised alongside the legitimate children. Here is the family drama hook, with a political and historical flavor. It's two little hooks alongside one big, strong hook. Next is the execution of the MC, who we like, who admits that he broke his vow, but he did it because he knew the rest of the world had to know what he saw, and he accepts his execution. And it's by a guy we have a strong sense is a good man. The hook that promises that the guys you are rooting for are not safe has returned. The promise that there will be very real, unavoidable consequences for characters no matter who they are. And watching this scene after finishing season 1, you will see just how brilliantly promising this scene between Ned Stark and the person that we thought was the main character actually is. Puppies! Of a giant direwolf, promising puppies and fantasy creatures, another hook for the fantasy people. Oh my gosh, these puppies are so cute. I got mine before watching this show or reading these books, by the way, so bite me. Let's pick up the pace again. More family drama. Ooh, and intrigue. The older brothers and their... Who is this guy hanging out with them? As if he is their brother, but he clearly isn't? A romance, maybe? Okay, cue the romance audience interest. Huh. Brace yourselves, romance lovers. Old war buddy relationship. Oh, hey, the Queen's twin brother is looking good in white and gold. One for the ladies. Watch out, ladies, it's gonna get weird real fast. Okay, noble father is offered a very high position in the world, second to the king. This is what his wife was telling him he could refuse? Why wouldn't he want more power? Well, some TNA. Well, that one's definitely here for people who sign up for HBO and other entertainment services specifically for this sort of thing. So, although I count this as probably the cheapest hook in the show, I cannot deny that it is effective in ensnaring a certain demographic, one that might not have otherwise had any interest whatsoever in a political family fantasy war buddy epic. Actually, a lot of the war buddy fans might fall into this demographic too. I don't know. And what's this? A tragic and mysterious past and an enemy that's still out there? And what have we got here? More siblings? Oh, that's nice. Oh, wait. No, it isn't. Abusive, controlling, perverted brother and the doe-eyed sister is the victim. Instant sympathy. And possibly a hook for people who like to watch abusers humiliate and abuse their victims, which is also a cheap hook, but it's tied hip to hip with audiences who enjoy really hating someone. Oh no, this is the barbarian this poor girl is getting married to? How is she going to get out of this one? There are several hooks in this scenario I'm not going to go into, but it stretches from a promise of the potential rise of a strong female hero to M&A. That's the version of TNA that's there for the women. It's almost the same as TNA, but yeah, not quite. Teenage daughter with teenage hormones. We can all roll our eyes, Lady Stark. And that is a kind of a small hook too. Not Sansa, but Lady Stark. We sympathize with her sentiment because Sansa is obviously a teenager letting her ignorant brain be controlled by her swirling hormones. Parents will get this one a lot. Interesting dialogue between the bastard son and the queen's disfavored brother. Finally, some characters talking about the weird stuff we saw in the first scene. A promise that this subject won't be completely dropped. What's this? A secret message from Lady Stark's sister? The king is in danger, and so is anyone who goes to the capital. Wait, isn't that where we've been asked to go? The barbarians killing each other. Nice. Good violence is always a hook for people who like that. A kind and loyal knight. Loyal to the poor abused girl. Is this a promise that they will have an alliance or more? Dragon eggs! Alright, a promise of the classic fantasy creature that classic fantasy enthusiasts love. Oh wait, they're petrified. Aw, that's a bummer. Probably nothing will come of that. Yeah, all of us fantasy lovers know not to believe that for even a second. A surprisingly lovely gift from the barbarian husband. He might be more than he seems to be. Great character promising hook. What's this? Ned's youngest son hears something. Oh, incest. The queen and her brother? There are a couple of demographics that this targets, and I personally fell into the one focused more on how this is going to affect the politics, especially with our young Bran Stark knowing who's doing who, and then, bam! We are left with possible murder between the two main families we've been following up to this point. This is a promise that things will not go well if anyone finds out what has happened in the final 2.5 seconds of this episode. Now, when I asked my family about what moment first really sparked their interest in the show, my Alaskan survivalist sister said the part when the patrol gets attacked by the White Walkers. My business managing mom said it was when Ned Stark looked like he didn't want to execute the patroller, but did it anyway because he knew he had to. My medical student sister said it was when Lady Stark eye-rolled her hormonal, overly dramatic daughter, and she knew that this show wasn't going to have any of that nonsense in it. I got hooked when Daenerys got the dragon eggs. My private investigator brother didn't really feel hooked at all until he was sure that there was an outstanding, noble character that he actually wanted to root for. And that didn't actually happen until nearly the end of episode 4, when Jon Snow admitted that he's a virgin because he didn't want to accidentally get a prostitute pregnant and put another child through the hardship of growing up as a bastard. You can argue all you want about where the hook is in this show, but the truth is that different elements are going to do the job for different audiences and readers. The thing this show did right is that it had a mix of lots of different types of stories, appealing to a lot of different kinds of people. And it made it clear as early in the story as possible, and as frequently in the story as possible, that these elements were going to appear regularly. It was brilliant. Learning about a barbarian culture that was clearly meant to be depicted as barbaric held no interest for me. But put the poor, abused girl in there as their Khaleesi and show that this culture might be more nuanced than it appears at first glance, and I'm hooked there too. So much so that I'll look past the depictions of simulated rape and disembowelment as a celebrated feature of their culture's weddings. Who knows, I might eventually come to like that the Dothraki are known for killing people at their parties. It's no mystery to me why this show did so well. It's rife with little hooks here and there. It regularly gave a little for some of the important audiences, like the fantasy world audience, the historical political intrigue audience, the complex characters and relationships audience, and it had enough other stuff peppered in to bring in even more audience. Although I personally am a big fan of really pure story with distilled characters and themes, such stories are limited in the potential range of their audience right from the get-go. As a writer, being aware of this makes me reconsider how I build my story. Maybe I should take greater personal interest in the smaller characters and plots and world elements of my story, and see if I can juice anything out of them. If I can do this well, I can turn my story into a metaphorical fishhook barrel cactus, where every part of it has something to hook someone. I can think of it as sending out a fleet of fishermen, instead of just one lone boat that I hope catches the right fish that will be interested in how the story eventually plays out. And this takes the pressure off making one excellent, tailor-made hook. Now, I'm not arguing that this is the way it should be done, only that this is an alternative for if you feel like you're drowning as you hyper-focus on the beginning of your story. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell for notifications. It's a free way to support the channel. If you're feeling really generous, maybe check out my Ko-fi or Patreon. I've got links in the description. Until next time, be good to yourself.